Shalom Aleichem, everybody. We are now doing real remotely Daf Yud. We're actually starting on Tes Amud Beis 9b at the two dots about 20 lines up. And the Gemara begins, Teisha Tziburin Shel Matzah V'echad Shel Chametz. If there are 9 piles of matzah and 1 pile of chametz, so we've got 9 and 1 stationary piles. Va'osa achba v'shokel. And a mouse comes and takes a piece from one of the piles. In other words, all the piles were there. And the mouse snuck up to the piles and took off a piece from one of the piles. One of the piles of 9 matzah and 1 of chametz. Veloya didn't eat matzah shokel, eat chametz shokel. We do not know if he took it from the matzah pile or the chametz pile. Hainu, this is the case of Teisha Chanuyos. This is the case, the famous case in Shas of the 9 stores, of which there's going to be an explanation in a minute. Pirish, or another case. There were 10 piles. 9 piles of matzah, 1 pile of chametz. And then the wind came, and it blew off from one of the piles. It blew off a piece, and the piece now landed in front of the piles. In other words, it was pirish. It separated from one of the piles. The actual matzah itself or the actual chametz. And now the mouse came and took it into the house. Hainu Seifa, this is the Seifa of the same Baraisa. So what we are about to do is go into a Baraisa that is one of the classical Baraisas in Shas. It shows up all the place. And it establishes 2 great laws. The law of Kol Kivua Kemechza al Mechza Dami. Anything that is fixed in place, that is rooted in place, is treated as a 50-50 possibility. Mashenken, the other one is called Kol Deparish. Anything that separates from a place is assumed. Kol Deparish, Meruba Parish, it's assumed that it was separated from the majority of what's there. What's going on? And more important from this Baraisa establishes essentially the idea behind what is known as the briska derech halimut, the briska way of learning, i.e., the difference between the gavra and the chepsa. The gavra meaning the person or the animal, as opposed to the chepsa, the merchandise, the thing. And it has differences in all of Shas, in things that have to do with acquisitions. It is a big deal in acquisitions. It is a big deal in how we look at different aspects of halacha in kabbanis and sacrifices. It affects every single nuance of halachic understanding. The situation here is as follows. There's a mall. In this mall, there are 10 stores. 10 stores selling meat. 9 of the stores sell kosher meat. 1 of the stores is selling nevela, non-kosher meat. 9 of the stores are selling meat that was slaughtered correctly. And 1 of them is selling meat that was not slaughtered, that the behemoth simply died and they have the meat. The stores are all stocked with meat. Zakta de Bryson, Titania, Teisha Chaniyos, 9 stores, Kulam Moichem Besar Shchuta, all sell kosher meat. Va'achad Mecheres Basar Nevela, 1 of them sells non-kosher meat, Nevela, which means a bit from a behemoth that died. V'lokach me'eches mehem, and somebody, let's call him Ruvain, came into one of the stores. He, the Gavra, walked into one of the stores and purchased a piece of meat. And then he walks out and he says, I don't know from which store I purchased the meat. Zakti Gemara, Sefeikoi Asa. This doubt doubt creates a isser of what makes it forbidden, and the meat may not be eaten. Because what's going on? The stores are stationary. They're kavua. Each store is an individual entity for itself. 9 kosher, 1 non-kosher, all in the same mall, all in a line, as it were. That means that Reuven, the person, on a probability, had equal probability to walk in to any one of the 10 stores that are standing in front of him in the mall that he went shopping for meat. That means each store is looked at as an individual gavra by itself. And he is the gavra, he himself is the gavra that is walking into each one of the stores. And he has an equal probability to have walked into any one of those stores. Otherwise known as kol kavua, anything that is fixed, kemerza al merza dami. The probability is 50-50. So therefore, there was a 50-50 shot he walked into this store, 50-50 shot he walked into this store, and so on and so forth. So therefore, just as there's a 50-50 shot that he walked into any one of the 9 stores that had matzah, that had kosher meat, so too there is a 50-50 shot that he walked into the store that was selling non-kosher meat. Since it's equal, kol kavua, since it's all established, it's fixed in place, the probability is that you look at each one individually, and on an individual basis, he had the same probability to walk into each individual store. Kol kavua kemerza al merza dami. Therefore, the meat may as well 50-50 shot that it may have also come from the non-kosher butcher shop. Therefore, it is usher. However, continues the Baraisa, ubenimsa, but if you find the piece of meat outside the stores, that means the merchandise, which of course in this case is the meat, and one piece of the merchandise somehow separated itself from the store and ended up plop right outside the store, outside in the front, in between all the stores, in front of all the 10 stores. So now we're already not looking at the person walking into the store. We're not looking at the stores themselves that are established. We're looking at a piece of meat that separated, that was porish, that separated itself, that somehow got separated out onto the floor in front of the stores. So now we're looking at the merchandise. We're looking at the chafetzim. Now we say, according to that, kol de porish, anything that separates, miruba porish, kol de porish, miruba porish, anything that separates out, we go on the assumption that it's separated out from the majority. Since the majority of the meat to be found were in the 9 kosher stores is kosher meat, and only one store has non-kosher meat, and the meat, this piece of meat that separated itself out, we go called the parish, meruba parish. We assume that it came from the kosher store, and he's allowed to eat this piece of meat. So again, we have the 2 ideas. If it's from the if we're talking about the establishments, and he himself has to pick himself up to walk into any one of the individual establishments, kol kavua kemerza merza dami, anything fixed in its place, otherwise known as the gabras, he exists, that if that's what it is, it's therefore kemerza merza dami. Everybody's got a 50-50% probability, and you cannot eat the meat because the probability that you may have walked into the Geisha butcher stores as much of probability as you walked into any one of the 9 kosher butcher stores. But if the meat separates itself out, somehow it ended up on the floor, a piece of meat in front of all the stores. Now we're dealing with the chefza. We're dealing with the merchandise. Now we look at the totality of the merchandise. Since most of the merchandise is kosher meat, the meat is considered called the parish, miruba parish. Anything that separates, we make the assumption it comes from the majority, and you can eat the meat. So therefore, by the same token, if the mouse, we had these piles, 9 piles of matzah, and one pile of chametz, and the mouse went to the piles and removed from the piles, the mouse had the probability to take from any one of the individual piles. So each pile is a 50-50. So therefore I got to take I got to worry that maybe he took from the chametz sticker pile, which means that the piece of chametz that he took into the house, the piece that he took into the house is now chametz, and you've got to recheck your house. On the other hand, if the wind blew off a piece from those 10 piles, and now the piece is in front, and now the mouse took it, now we're dealing with the piece. The piece is the chepsa, the merchandise. The piece is the merchandise. Therefore, the bit called the parish merubah parish. I can assume that the piece that was blown off came from the majority, which is matzah, and then therefore it was a piece of matzah that the mouse picked up from the piece from the floor, and therefore I do not have to do another bedika. That's this Gemara. Gemara has another case. Shnei tziburim. If there were two piles, echad shel matzah ve'echad shel chametz. One is a pile of matzah, one is a pile of chametz. Ulefneim shnei batim, and in front of them there are two houses. Echad baduk. One house had been searched for chametz. Ve'echad she'ena baduk, and one house was not searched for baduk. Va'asu shnei akrabim, and two mice showed up. Echad shakel matzah, ve'echad shakel chametz. One took a piece of matzah, and one took a piece of chametz. And we know all this. We see this. V'lo yodinin hay lahai ayel v'hay lahayel. And we do not know if this one went into this house and this one went into that house. So what's the story with the houses? Do we have to research that? Do we have to search them again or not? Hainu shtei kupas. This is just like the story of the two boxes. Okay? The story is as follows. Titania. We learned in the Baraisa, shtei kupas, two boxes. Echad shel chulin ve'echad shel truma. One contained regular produce, and one contained produce of truma that was holy, obviously. And in front of them there were another two containers, two size containers, says a certain size, filled with produce. Two other boxes filled with produce. Echad shel chulin ve'echad shel truma. And those two other boxes also, one of them held non-sacred produce, and one held truma produce. V'naflu elu l'saych elu, and the contents in the said containers fell into the two boxes, and we don't know which one fell into which. Zok the Baraisa mutarin. We say that the chulin, the non-sacred produce, is still good, and we do not say that maybe there now some truma sacred produce is now mixed up in it. Shani oimer, for I say, chulin l'say chulin naflu. The non-sacred, the okay produce fell into the okay produce. Truma l'say truma naflu, and the sacred and the truma fell into the box with truma. And the reason for this, the Gemara is going to get to on the next moment. In the same way, chametz that was taken from an unsearched house, and the matzah that was taken in, we could say that in one case the chametz was taken into the unsearched house, and the house that wasn't searched that got the chametz from the mouse that was carrying the piece of chametz carried the chametz into the unsearched house, and the mouse that carried the piece of matzah carried it into the matzah house, and therefore the matzah it carried it into the house that was already searched. So therefore, the house that was already searched does not need to be searched again. So Zakti Gemara, perhaps when do I have this principle that I say? Now we are on top of Daf Yud Amud Aleph, Bitruma Dirabanan, like Rashi says, Bisman Hazeh, like today, by Truma Dirabanan. So there I go ahead and I'm lenient. The chametz, the araisa, but by chametz we're dealing with a biblical problem. Mi amrina. Do we say, therefore, that we go on a leniency, that we can make an assumption that the mouse carrying the chametz only went into the non-searched house, and the mouse that with the matzah went into the searched house? How could you say that? We're dealing with a diaraisa. Zakti Gemara. Auto bedikas chametz diaraisa? Are you telling me that searching for chametz is a diaraisa? That's not so. Dirabbananu. Searching for chametz is another level that the Rabbanim put in. Because midiaraisa, biblically speaking, bitul ba'al masagi. We know that mere nullification, in fact, nullification in the heart, bitul b'leiv sagi, and nullification even by the heart, even if you don't say something, is sufficient. So therefore, in our case, because we're dealing with bidikas chametz, the search for chametz, which is only rabbinic in nature, we can go ahead and be lenient. Something Gemara Vayit. Tzibur echad shel chametz. I've got only one pile. This time I got a pile of chametz. Ulefanav shnei batim bedukin. And in front of me is two houses, both that were checked, that did bedikas chametz. Va'asa achba b'shokel, and the mouse came and took some chametz. V'lo yadinini lahai al ilahai al. And we don't know into this house or to that house, but he definitely went into one of the searched houses. Hainu shtei shavilin. This is the case of the two paths. The Tanam, because we learned in the Mishnah in Tahiris, Shnei Shavilin. There were two paths. You know, and you get into the fork in the road, take it. There were two paths, one to the right, one to the left. Echad Tamai, the Echad Tar. One path was Tamei, there was dead bodies buried under the path, and the other one is Tar, it was clean. V'halach be'echad mehem v'asa Tars. And Ruvain went down one of the paths, not knowing which path he went down, he forgot. And afterwards he touched Torah dika food, clean food. So now, obviously, if he went down the Tomei dika path, better Tomei, and now he touched food, the food now would be Tomei. So that's the question. And now his Chabe came, Shimon, and he came, and he went down the other path. So he went down the right path, he went down the left path, and he also, Shimon, also touched Torah dika food. So now, one of the Torah dika foods is definitely Tameh. There's not a question, because one of them definitely went down the path that was Tameh, and they both touched Torah dika food. So, and they went, so what the question is, what's the halacha? Rabbi Yehuda, Im nishul zeb ibnei atzmai, the zeb ibnei atzmai, if each of them individually go to the Rav and they ask about their case, each individually, tahirin, then it's tar. Because every individual, each individual has an equal shot to go down this path or go down that path. Okay? Since each one is individual to go down either path, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbanan says, we're not going to worry. We consider you tired, and we're going to assume you went down the clean path. The next guy shows up with the same story. He's under the same uncertainty, right? Tar path or non-tar path. He's got the same exact thing. Therefore, we say you remain in your chazaka. Chazaka de mi'ikara. You started off the day that you were tar. That's where you are. That's the vadai. The vada is that I'm a becheskas tar, becheskas demi kara. I'm in my assumption from the beginning, which is that I am pure. Now the only question is, I have an uncertainty. Which one did I go down, the right or the left? I'm not sure what it is. Something about a tar, you tar. However, Shnei and Bebasachas, that both Reuven and Shimon show up at the Rav, and they both ask the question at the same time. So now the fact is, it's very nice that you both started b'cheskas kashrus, b'cheskas b'ikara, that you began the day full tar. One of you, Vadai, went down one of the paths, and you're both standing in front of the Rav. So now there's no getting around it. So the answer is, Tameim, they're both Tamei. And since definitely there is a Tamei person in the room, the Chazaka falls away of the original tar, and now they're both considered Tamei. Rabbi Yosi says, Benkach u Benkach Tameim. Both cases, in either case, they're Tamei. So the Gemara explains what's going on over there. And then explains how this rolls back to Chametz. In the search of Chametz and the mice. If they came together, that their original chazaka falls away, and now we got to deal with the facts on the ground, which is that definitely one of them is certainly tamei, and since I can't tell who, they're both considered tamei. If they come one at a time, everybody agrees that they're still tar because they each come in individually with a cheskas miikora that they're tar, a cheskas tahara, that the assumption that they're tar from the beginning of the day. And the only question is now we have an uncertainty if this individual went down this road or that road. That uncertainty doesn't knock away my original chazaka, my original assumption of tar. If one guy, if Reuven comes to ask about what's the story with him, and what's the story with my friend Shimon? Rabbi Yosi says, listen, if you're coming to ask for you and your friend, it's as if you and your friend are standing here. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's as if you're asking first about yourself. You finish with yourself. You walk out, as it were, and now it's as if your chaver is here. You're just a shliach of your chaver to ask the shayla for him, and that's the same thing. So, same thing with regard to the chametz. If each baal habayis, if each homeowner came individually, we can rule. The ruling would be that you're parted from doing a new search. But if they came together, and since without a question, one of the mice was carrying chametz, and it did carry into one of the houses that had been checked. But if they both show up together, well, that means there's a vadaya house here that has chametz within it, right? That would require a check. That we don't know if it has chametz in it because the mice might have run out. But the point is that a chametz went into it from the mice, right? In that case, if they both come together, they're both going to have to recheck their houses. And if one comes to ask about himself and his chaber, then we come to the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi would say, if you're asking about both, it's as if both are here and you both have to recheck. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it's like you asked about yourself and you don't have to check, and then you came to ask about your friend and he doesn't have to check. Gemara says another case. Sofik al sofik loy ol. If there is a doubt whether the mouse went into a house that was already did bedikas chametz with chametz or not. I don't know if the mouse went in with chametz to this one house that had been checked, that we had done bedikas chametz. I know this is the case of Bika, of the case of the open fields, who plugged to the Rabbi Eliezer Rabbana. Ditnan. If someone entered into a field during the rainy season, this is during the time when the crops are being grown. So people are not allowed to use the field as a shortcut. Vituma besada plainis. And in one of these fields over here, in this neighborhood, there is a grave. Everybody knows there is a grave within its expanse. Va'amar, and he says, and one says, I went through that area. And I don't know if I walked through that field or I didn't walk through that field. So am I tomei or am I not tomei? Rabbi Eliezer mitar v'chachamim mitamim. Rabbi Eliezer calls him tar, and the sages and the chachamim say that he's tomei. Shahaya Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer says sofik be tar. The doubt concerning coming in, if you're not sure you went into the place, even though it's a private domain, you're still tar. Suffolk magid tuma tame. But if it's a doubt whether you actually touched tame in a private place, then you would be tame. Because the halacha is, which we had before, Suffolk tame birishus harabim tar. If it's an uncertainty whether you touched tame in a rishus harabim, the halacha is you tar. Suffolk tame b'rishus hayachid. If we're suffik whether there is tame in a rishus hayachid, in a private property, the halacha is tame yutame. Rabbi Eliezer says, where do I say suffik b'rishus hayachid? Tame, a suffik in a private property is assumed to be tame. That's only where the suffik is whether I touched the tame or not. If the suffik is whether I actually went into the place where there was tame, that already is tar. Because in truth, you're dealing with you're almost dealing with two sveikas here. Did I go in? And if I went in, did I touch the tame, or did I go over the tummy if it's a grave? So we've got, and when you have a sveka, two uncertainties, i.e., did I go into this Rishus HaYachid that had the tummy? And number two, if I went in, did I touch it or did I go over it? That's a sveka. It's uncertainty. And if you go on the other side, then it's another uncertainty. Sveka loy gozer rabbanan on an uncertainty of an uncertainty. The rabbanan did not make any gezeres. That's what Rabbi Eliezer says. Okay, so Rabbi Eliezer therefore would say, where there's a doubt whether the mouse ever entered the house, which since Bedikas Chametz is only a midrabanan. So first we have a doubt whether he ever brought in the chametz. And then we say, if it's there, did he eat it? Did he not? What's the story? Did he bring it out? We say, therefore, it's rules leniently. And in fact, in this case, even Chazal would agree that the house does not need to be searched again, because Bedikas Chametz is only a midrabanan and a rabbanan. We're mekel. Mashenke and the Gabe Tuma, which is dealing with a diaraisa dikadinim, which is dealing with the biblical problems. There, the Chachamim would say, no, because it's in a Rishus HaYachid, in a private property, and Suffolk Tomei, Rishus HaYachid is, we call it Tomei, we say that's enough. What do you call it, on a diaraisa dikadin, right? We're going to be machmir even on where you can come to a sveka, an uncertainty to another uncertainty. When there are diaraisas involved, we have to go lechumra. We have to take the harsher position. Another case, ol ubadak v'lo yeshkach. If a mouse went into a searched house with chametz, and the owner searched the house and didn't find it. So again, that we know the mouse took chametz into a house where bedika took place, and the owner went and he said, "Okay, I saw the mouse. I'm gonna search the house," and he searches the house and he can't find any chametz. Plug to the Ramei Rabban. It's not. Ramei said, anything that is now in a presumptive state, a chazaka of tumah, okay, it's assumed to be tumah, it remains in its presumptive state of tumah until you actually know where the tumah is. So if you know that there's a thought to say that a tumah thing was brought into a home, and we don't know if it was taken out, therefore the house is in a presumptive state of tumah, and it remains in this presumptive state of tumah until we can ascertain that the piece was absolutely removed from the house. The Chachamim Aimrim, Baidek, you search the house, until you get to the layer of rock, oil, karka, or to the virgin ground underneath, the virgin ground underneath, and if the tumah is not found, we assume that the tumah is no longer there. We make an assumption the tumah is gone, and now it became star. So in the case of chametz, Rameya would agree that the house does not have to be searched again, only because it's midrabanan. According to Rameya, unless we, in the normal scale of things, if I knew the mouse was there, the mouse with the house, and I couldn't find the piece that the mouse brought in the normal, you would say, Rameya would say, based upon what he says, since I know for sure that the piece went in there, I can't assume it went out unless I actually know that it went out. We don't say that by B'dikas Chametz, because B'dikas Chametz is a derabanan, since it's only rabbinic in nature, we're lenient. Chachamim, for sure. The Chachamim say, if you searched your house and you don't find it, you definitely could already assume that the piece left the house. Another case. Oh, badak ve'eshkach. If a mouse again took a piece of chametz and went with that piece of chametz into a house that was baidik, that was searched, and the owner searched the house and found chametz. But now here's the question: he found chametz. Do we know that the chametz is that piece that the mouse brought in, or maybe he found another piece of chametz? Plug to the Rebbe with Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. We come to the argument between Rebbe and Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. The Tanya in Galand saw the Sheneva by Kever, a field which we knew had a grave, and then the marking of the grave, the matzeva fell off, disappeared, something happened, and the grave was lost. So we don't know where the grave is. Anybody who enters into the field, therefore, gets a presumption of Tameh. Nimtza kever, but let's say they find the kever. Hanichtav l'soichai tar. Anybody who enters into any other part of the field is therefore tar. In other words, we found the lost. We lost the kever. Then we found the kever. We say anybody who walks into any other part of the field, he's okay. He's still tar. Shani oimer, because I say kever sha'obaru kever shenimsa. The kever that was lost is now the grave that was found. Divrei Rebbe. Nope, you got to search the field because you lost a specific grave. Now you found a grave. Who's to say that this grave you found is the grave that you originally lost? Maybe it's another grave site. So Zakrab Shimon, you got to clean it out. The same thing with therefore would have to be. Okay, Rebbe would go on the assumption once the chametz is discovered. Once the chametz is discovered, the mouse is chametz. Once the piece is discovered, I have the right to assume that the chametz that went in with the mouse is the chametz that I now found. Rav Shimon and Gamliel would require no, just because the mouse brought in a piece, the piece that you found may not be the piece that the mouse brought in, and you must search the rest of the house. You got to keep right on searching just because you found it. If someone went and did bedikas chametz and he put down 9 pieces, he put down 9 pieces on the side, and lo and behold, he found 10 pieces. He found 10 pieces. Plug to the Rebbe v'Rabbana. Titania haniach mono matzah masayim. If one put into a box a mono, let's call it $100 of Maisa Sheni money into a box, and the next time he looks into the box, he discovers 2 monas, $200 in the box, and he doesn't remember ever putting another $100 of Maisa Sheni into the box, and the box is therefore assumed Chulan and Maisa Sheni Ma'arvim Zeh B'Zeh. It's considered that Chulan and Maisa Sheni, non-sacred money and sacred money, have been mixed together. That one mana is Maisa Sheni and the other mana is Chulan. Divrei Rebbe, this is Rebbe, and therefore what you have to do, you take another mana and you redeem the other coins on this new mana, and you say, whichever one of these coins is the Maisa Sheni, I'm redeeming it onto this new mana. So the 2 coins in the box then become mutter to use in any way you want, and the new mana that was used to redeem the other ones and now has holiness of Maisa Sheni, I've got to take to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, to use and spend over there Maisa Sheni. That's what Rebbe says. It's all chulin. All the money is assumed to be chulin, because people throughout the year are becheskas, are assumed to be careful to separate their monies. Maisa Sheni goes here, chulin goes here. Therefore, in this case, we can assume that he removed the original Maisa Sheni, and now he put in 2 new chulin monies. Okay, even though Maisa Sheni is a dioraisa, so theoretically we have a suffix, we should go lechumra, right? Taisus says, Taisus explains, even though we're dealing with a biblical prohibition of Maisa Sheni, but the fact that there's a chazaka, that people are known, that they're very careful to separate their monies between Maisa Sheni and regular, the chazaka is almost like a fact. And that fact overrides the uncertainty that we're now dealing with. And that's enough even by a dioraisa. Just give me 1 minute, I'll be right back. Sorry about that. Right back. Something Gemara, another case. Haniach also matzatisha. If he put down 10 pieces of chametz and he only found 9, Hainu seifetz of the same baraisa. The Tanya we learned. Heniach masayim. If one placed 2 manas of Maisa Sheni into the box, he placed $200 worth, 2 $100 bills, $100 coins into a box. Umatzamana, and then he only looks at it again, he only finds 100, only 1 coin. Mana menuach umana muto. It's assumed that the original mana was removed and one of the other ones remained. Divrei Rebbe, that they wanted one of the manas is in there. The one of the two of the original manas, the only mana that's left in the box remains is the Maisa Sheni, and the other one you must have removed and you forgot. The Chachamim Oimrim Hakol Chulin. No, it's all Chulin for the same reason. The Chachamim would say we're very careful when if I had two coins of Maisa Sheni in the box and I removed one, I would have removed the second one. I don't leave them lying around. So the new coin that you find in there is the coin that you find there is a brand new coin from Chulin. That's what you could do. Same thing according to Rebbe. You would need to search the house for only one piece, because I would say that you found 9. That's from the original 9. You're missing one piece. It's no different. It's the same thing like when I had 2 coins of Maisa Sheni and now I only have 1. The assumption is I took the one original coin of Maisa Sheni, and I'm left with the other coin of Maisa Sheni. Same thing here. The 9 pieces that you found were from the 10 pieces that you put out, and the 10th piece you got to search for the one piece. Chazal say no. When you search for the chametz, you searched and you found all 10 pieces. You put it on the side to burn it the next day. Now you count up all your pieces and you only have 9. That means you're dealing with a brand new situation. It's a brand new situation. And you got to search the house now for another 10 pieces. Whatever it is, something changed over here. There's another 10 pieces. That's how the Chazal would take a look at this. Amid Beis. Yud Amid Beis. Haniach bezovis zu umotz bezovis acheres. If one took his chametz that he had searched for, he put it in one corner of a searched house. Okay, let's say he put the pieces to burn the next day. He put it in his right-hand corner, and then in the morning he finds it in the left-hand corner. Plug to the Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan. We've gotten to the dispute between Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis. The Tanya in the land, Kardem Shabbat Bebayis, an axe that was lost in a house, Habayis Tomei. The house is now considered to be assumed to be completely Tomei. Shani Oimer, I say, Odom Tomei Nichnas L'Shom V'Notlei. A Tomedik, a person entered there and took it, and at the same time touched all the other utensils in the house. Why? Because if the guy is a gazlan, if he's a thief, then he's not careful on being pure. So he's on the assumption of being tamei. And if he's a thief, believe me, he didn't just touch the axe, he touched everything else too. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, no, Habai is tar, the house is pure. Shani, because I say, no, the owner of the axe went ahead and lent it to another person, and he forgot that he lent it. Or he himself moved it from the right-hand corner to the left-hand corner, and he forgot that he moved it. The Gemara says, whoever talked about a corner? We were talking about an axe that got lost. Who cares? How did this corner get in there? The Bryce is missing words, and this is really what it's trying to say. Kardem Shabbat Bebayis, an axe that was lost in the house, Habayis Tomei. Shani Oima Odom Tomei Nichnas L'Shom B'Notloi. For I say that a Tomei person entered there and took it. Or if he left it in one corner and was found in another corner, Habayis Tomei. Shani Oima Odom Tomei Nichnas L'Shom. A Tomei person entered there, Unotloi B'Zobis Zuba Nicha B'Zobis Acheres, and took it from one corner and put it into another corner. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Habai is tar. The house is tar. Shani Yomi, because I say that he lent the axe to somebody else and he forgot. Or he himself moved it from one corner to the other corner and he forgot. So the same in the case of chametz, we would say that according to Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, if the chametz was left in one corner and then found it in another corner, we would say the owner himself moved it and he just forgot that he did. The house does not have to be searched again. The Chachamim say we do not assume that the owner just moves things and forgets. We have to assume that a mouse entered the house and took the chametz from one corner to the other corner, and therefore the house has to be searched again. And he moved it somewhere else. So that means things are going on in the house. Things are going on in the house. It's got to be searched again. Amar Rava says, If a mouse entered the house with a loaf of bread in his mouth, we saw him come in with a loaf of bread in his mouth. And the owner comes in and he finds crumbs all over the place. He has to search the house because it's not the way of a mouse to crumble food. Since you're seeing crumbs, the assumption is it's not the chametz that the mouse brought in, because the mouse usually takes it into his mouth hole and eats the chametz whole. So the fact there are crumbs, it means your first search wasn't the great search, and you got to research the house. A child comes in and he's got bread in his hands, and you enter after him, you see he's made a mess. There are crumbs all over the place. This does not require a new search, because it's the way of a child to crumble food. We therefore can assume that the crumbs came from the loaf that the child brought in. That's a good asmach. That's a good way to assume. A mouse enters into the house with a loaf of bread in its mouth. And then a mouse, lav dafka, the mouse, a mouse walks out of the house and he's got a piece of bread in his mouth. Ma, what's the din? Me, Amrina, do I say, Hainu Haidol, Hainu Haidinopak? Do I say the mouse, this is the mouse that went in with the piece of bread, and this is the mouse that came out with the piece of bread, which means I don't have to do a new patika. Maybe it's a different mouse. It's a different mouse, and he's carrying out a different loaf. And if he's carrying out a different loaf, therefore I got to go again and check. I got to check the house again for chametz. So, tomorrow. Okay, if you want to take one of the sides, that this one went in is the same mouse that went out with the piece of bread in his mouth. What about this case? A white mouse went into the house that was searched, the house that already done with the piece of bread in his mouth. And a black mouse comes out of the house with a loaf in his mouth. One thing is certain, it's a different mouse. And therefore, we got to assume the loaf that's in his mouth is a different loaf. And I got to search the house again. No, maybe the black mouse came, knocked over the white mouse, stole the piece of bread, and it's the same piece of bread that he's now running and scurrying out of the house. And if that's the case, I don't have to recheck the house. Something Gemara. The Ib tips and now if you want to say, Akbarim Shaloi Shaki Adadi, and that mice do not take food one from the other. So therefore, it's an Akba Nichnas Vikika Bibib. So then, what about this case? If a mouse went into a house with a loaf of bread in his mouth, Vichulda, and a weasel, Yotza Vikika Bibia, a weasel followed after it came out with a loaf in its mouth. Mao, what's the din? Do we say that the weasel certainly stole the loaf of bread from the mouse, so therefore we don't really have to recheck the house? Or maybe it's a different loaf. For it was so that the weasel took it from the mouse, something's missing. Then you should have found not only the bread in the mouth of the weasel, you should have found the mouse in the mouth of the weasel. The imtim slime, if you want to say isa the akbar shaklet, if you want to say that the weasel did take the loaf from the mouse, akbar b'pia having mishkaki, and in fact, the mouse was found in the mouth of the weasel as well. So we have the bread in the mouth of the weasel. Then we've got the question is like this: akbar nichnas. A mouse went into the house. And the loaf was in his mouth. And a weasel comes out. And a piece of bread and a mouse was in the mouth of the weasel. What's the din? Do we say this is certainly the same loaf of bread that went into the house with the mouse, that the weasel then caught the mouse And he obviously picked up as well the bread, so now you don't have to search the house again. Perhaps if it was the same, or if it was the same loaf that the mouse had in his mouth, then the loaf should have been found not in the mouth of the weasel. It should have been found in the mouth of the dead mouse, because it means the mouse had the bread in his mouth. The weasel came and killed the mouse, and then picks up the mouse with the bread in the mouth of the mouse and carries them out. And the fact that the bread is now in the mouth of the weasel as well as the mouse itself, meaning the mouse is the mouse and the bread is the bread. It could be a separate piece of bread, and you got to check the house. Or maybe because of the fear that the mouse had of the weasel, the loaf fell out of the mouth of the mouse. The weasel killed the mouse, and he went ahead and then had to pick up the piece of bread because it's no longer in the mouth of the mouse, and that's why it's separated in the mouth of the weasel. And therefore, I don't know what the story is. And for the Gemara, Teku, Tishbi, Taritz, Kushi, V'yiboyis. Tishbi, that would be Elio Tishbi. Elio from the town of Tishbi. He will eventually count Tishbi, Taritz. He will come and answer all of our kashas and inquiries, all our questions and inquiries. Bayirava, Kika b'shmei koira. If there was a loaf of bread on a high beam in the house, you decided to store your bread on this very high beam in the house. And in order to get it down, you obviously have to get a ladder and climb up. So the question is, regarding now Pesach is coming, Sarich Sulam Lo'irida, do I require a ladder to take it down? Or ain't Sarich, I don't need to do so. Because Mimadishach, I was Mavatal the bread. I nullified the bread in my heart. I said, this is not my bread for Pesach, it's nullified. Me, Amrina, Kula Hai, Loyachichu Rabbanon. Do we say the Rabbanon do not make a person have to be trouble a person, matriach a person, trouble a person to such an extent? For since it will not come down on its own, he will not come to eat it. In other words, it will not fall down on its own on Pesach, and then the food will be on the ground, and the person might make a mistake and forget it's Pesach and eat from the chametz. Or maybe sometimes the window is open, or there's an earthquake, or whatever. There's a shake, and the bread will fall off on a rare occasion. It will fall off the high beam, and somebody might come to eat it. And therefore, I do have to go now and get a ladder, take it down, and nullify it, and hide it, and do whatever I got to do. If I'm going to say that sometimes it does fall and somebody might come to eat it on Pesach, so I've got to bring a ladder. Kika bibar. What about just the opposite? A loaf of bread in a ditch, a deep ditch. Which in order to get to the bottom, you need a ladder to bring it up. Do you have to, here on Erev Pesach, worry about that chametz, and which I have been mevatel, I was nullified it in my heart? That's not the problem. But do I have to worry about this chametz down in the ditch, or no? Do I got to get a ladder and climb down or not? Here, I'm not, certainly it's not prone to come up on its own. It's not coming out of the bar by itself. So I'm not concerned that it's going to be found outside the bar and somebody might forget its Pesach and eat it. Maybe somebody has to come down there and take care of his needs. In other words, he needs to use it as a bathroom. And while he's there, he uses the bathroom, he sees the bread and he forgets it's Pesach and he goes to start munching. Come to eat it on Pesach. And if you conclude that it has to be removed, you've got to bring the ladder, because somebody might go down to use it as a bathroom and might forget it's Pesach and eat the bread. What about tika b'pi nachash? A loaf of bread is in the mouth of a snake. Do you have to hire a snake charmer? Do you got to hire somebody from India to come as a snake charmer and charm the snake to release the bread so that you can put it aside? I ain't it, or you don't have to. In a person's body, the Rabbanon trouble a person, a matriach a person, to search for chametz. That means you go ahead and you have to go search. You got to do what you got to do. But they in his money, like him. No, but in his money, they don't bother a person. They don't say that you got to reach into your pocket to spend money to go ahead and find a person. If you yourself can't do this individual search like chametz in the mouth of a snake, then I got to go hire an expensive snake charmer. And for the Gemara, Teiku, Tishbi Yitaretz, Kushya V'Yaboyes. We don't know the answer. And Mitzvah Shem Eliyahu Hanavi will come and he will answer all our questions and inquiries. Okay, we are now at the Mishnah on the bottom of Daf Yud Amud Beis.